Have you all heard about the newest conspiracy theory? Oh, I'm sure your precious brains are thinking about a few. You probably haven't heard of this one, though. Pictures. I gotta show you. Pictures of US jets painted in Russian colors spark Syria false flag conspiracy. Have you seen this? This is stunning. I want to make sure that you all can see it real good because, and I know my precious Blog Talk Radio listeners, you can't see it, but just take my word for it here. This says Marines on the side of the jet. This is a U.S. jet. However, is painted the color of a Russian airplane. Some may say this is Photoshop. It's not. It's not. Let me read the article. This is amazing. It says here, pics of U.S. jets painted in Russian colors spark Syria false flag conspiracy. Photos using and showing U.S. jets being painted Russian colors have triggered debates and conspiracy theories online, with many saying Washington plans to conduct false flag attacks in Syria and blame them on Moscow. I find this fascinating. We were just talking about Russia. We were talking about Syria. We were talking about U.S. and the tensions that have been taking place, and even quoted comments from Gorbachev, serious concerns that Gorbachev had. You heard me, I said Gorbachev, crazy, I know. That Gorbachev has concerning just the current tension between the U.S. and Russia and how it is reminiscent to the Cold War times. And now this. It says here, the pictures of the U.S. jets were posted by a Canadian journalist last week on his Twitter account. I got more pictures. I got to see if I can show you. Let me see if I can show you now. It was posted to the Canadian journalist's Twitter account. Are they setting something up? Is the U.S. about to bomb something in Syria and then blame it on Russia? If they are, they just got caught. You know? If they were thinking about it. It says here, although the journalists noted that painting fighter jets in colors of potential aggressors is standard practice, I had no idea. Did not know that was standard practice. They cause a stir among conspiracy theorists anyway. Many of them accuse the U.S. of preparing a false flag attack aimed at framing Russia in Syria. From the Canadian journalist behind the original post came the following tweet. U.S. uses aggressor units to train pilots. The paint schemes makes fighters similar to Russian counterparts. Stop with the conspiracies. However, one Twitter user said the practice is reminiscent of Washington's past actions regarding Cuba. This is amazing stuff. Did we just get caught trying to do a false flag, or was this just a simple training exercise? It says here, the publication of the images fell on fertile ground. Relations between Russia and the U.S. over the Syria conflict are at an all-time low, with both countries exchanging threats and warnings with each other over their involvement in Syria. I got another picture here. The U.S. and other militaries are known for using aggressor squadrons which act as opposing forces in military war games. In addition to being painted in an adversary's color, they also use enemy tactics to provide realistic simulations of air combat. All right. Amazing. Maybe that's just what it was, just a training exercise. I did not know that that's what's done in a training exercise, but I'm not a commando or anything. Very interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on this if anything happens in the next few days or over in Aleppo or Damascus. Let's go to our next headline. Very interesting reports coming out from Russia. Russia's top propagandist. Who knew that there was a office of top propagandist over in Russia? However, there is. Russia's top propagandist, Dmitry Kislyak, says the United States' behavior could have, and I quote, nuclear complications. Is he being all talk? As a propagandist, that's what his job would be to do. Now it says here, a Russian news presenter dubbed the Kremlin's chief propagandist has warned the U.S. any impudent behavior towards Moscow could have, and I quote, nuclear complications. I'm not liking this, folks. I'm not liking the fact that we're talking nuclear over and over and over again, and nobody seems to have a problem with it. Well, I do. I have a problem with nuclear war. No, I've not been involved, and I'm not trying to be involved in a nuclear war. I'm not trying to have snow fall in California, if you know what I mean. Fallout is no joke. It's a horrible thing. If you want to, now listen, there is a movie. If you really want to know what happens after a nuclear war, watch a movie called The Day After. I highly recommend it. We actually played it. Some of you may remember, we played it on one of our live Open Your Eyes People broadcasts last year. It's called The Day After. You can find it on YouTube. It's about a 2-hour movie, if that. It's, I think it was done in the 80s. It was done during the time of the Cold War. And the director of the movie did it on purpose. He made the movie on purpose because of the tensions between the Cold War, between U.S. and Russia at the time. And the movie, you know, it will probably scare the bejeebies out of you. It'll probably knock your socks off, so don't wear any. It will surprise you. If you've never seen the movie, you have to see it, because I have to recommend this to Vladimir Putin too. You know, to our current administration, the Obama administration, watch The Day After. It's on YouTube. It is no joke. Listen, nuclear war is horrible. Oh, you got to see. If you have not seen it, if you've seen it, see it again. Make it a movie night. I'm not telling you to scare the kids. It's not about that. My kids have actually watched it, and praise the Lord, everybody's all right. But the point is that it's a sobering reminder. It will show you what the effects of nuclear war would do on U.S. soil. Because in the movie, the U.S. hit Russia, and Russia hit U.S. with nuclear warheads. And it took 30 minutes before the nuclear warheads hit the homeland, and it was horrific. Oh, dear. Amazing. So anyway, it goes on to say, Russian news presenter dubbed the Kremlin's chief propagandist has warned the U.S. any impudent behavior towards Moscow could have nuclear implications. Dmitry Kislov, this gentleman right here, was appointed by Vladimir Putin to head the country's government-owned news agency. How convenient. He made the warning last night, Monday night's edition of his flagship current affairs program called Vesti Nedeli, meaning News of the Week. Relations between the two countries hit a new low on Friday after Washington accused Moscow of war crimes following a sustained bombardment of the besieged Syrian city Aleppo, where at least 250,000 people are still living in the rebel-held east of the city. On Saturday, Russia vetoed a motion put to the United Nations Security Council, demanding an immediate end to the bombing campaign in Aleppo. A rival motion proposed by Russia was also rejected at the meeting, calling for a fresh ceasefire, but did not explicitly mention the bombing. This gentleman, Mr. Propagandist, said that there had been a radical change, quote, in the relationship between Russia and the U.S. in recent weeks, according to BBC. To allow talk in Washington of a plan B for Syria, everyone understands what this means. Direct military force in Syria, says Russia's propagandist. During Monday's program, a Russian Defense Ministry spokesman also warned U.S. bombers not to target the Syrian army. According to this gentleman, he said, "We will shoot them down." Mr. Kislov is a key part of Russia's media operations and has been described as a militant anti-Westerner by Russian media. And the county's chief propagandist, he is also subject to Western sanctions. Now, I gotta say this, my friends. I know they're calling this guy a chief propagandist here in the Western world. But make no mistake about it, this guy's not just talking smack. He's talking what is specifically being given to him to speak by Vladimir Putin as a warning to the West. Anyway, it goes on to say, in the past, this man has boasted that Russia was the only single country genuinely capable of turning the USA into a radioactive ash. Thanks a lot. And claimed last year in Syria, America stands on the side of the terrorist caliphate. In other words, this man accused the U.S. of being on the side of ISIS. Don't blame us. Come on. The government may be a whole nother story. But the American citizen is not down and supporting any terrorist. We will defend our country. But let's continue. His most recent comments come as Russia bolsters its military presence in the Mediterranean and Baltic regions. It says, goes on to say the following. Russia recently deployed the S-300 anti-aircraft missile system to Syria and sent 3 warships armed with Malakah cruise missiles from the Black Sea Fleet to the Mediterranean. On Saturday, Moscow confirmed it has started moving nuclear-capable Islander and missiles into the Kaliningrad, an act Poland said it considers a matter of the highest concern. The German foreign minister claimed that mounting tensions between the U.S. and Russia have led to a global political situation which is more dangerous, listen, than the Cold War. You have leaders rising up. I have to say predominantly NATO leaders saying, listen, or the leaders of NATO nations. This is getting dangerous, it's getting serious, and this is looking like the Cold War. Writing for German newspaper Bild, Frank Walter Steinmeier wrote, "It's a fallacy to think that this is like the Cold War. The current times are different and more dangerous." Wow. Former cabinet minister Andrew Mitchell compared Russia's actions in the Syrian conflict to that of the Nazis before World War II, saying Russia has shredded international law by providing military support for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's bombing campaign of rebel neighborhoods. Now, both Moscow and Damascus deny that they're striking deliberately any civilians and blaming the U.S.-backed and al-Qaeda-allied fighting factions in Aleppo for the continued violence. So you have a tit for tat, one blaming the other. Who is to blame? Oh dear. I say this, we're living in the last days. This is clearly a distress of nations. Go with me to the Gospel of Luke chapter 21, verse 25, and we will read it together. The Gospel of Luke chapter 21, verse 25 reads, "And there will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the stars, and on the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring." There is truly a distress of nations on the earth in these last days. We're looking at it. We're reading about it. Russia's top propaganda says U.S. behavior could have nuclear implications. We're hearing the word nuke being talked about one too many times. We have leaders in other Western nations, including Poland and Germany, that's saying this is getting dangerous now. It's looking like the Cold War. You have others saying this is not even like the Cold War. It's gotten even more dangerous than the Cold War. More is at stake this time around. Along with that, just as we reported here, pictures of U.S. jets painted in Russian colors spark Syria false flag conspiracy. Many are stating that this Marines jet, just as I showed you, Marines right here, although it is covered in Russian colors, has been set up to possibly post or put or do a false flag in Syria by the U.S. and blame it on Russia. However, others are saying, no, it's just a training exercise. This is what's typically done. Let's continue. We have more news, this time concerning the Koreas. South Korea, North Korea. What's going on with the Koreas? It says here, see, I'm telling you, one too much talk about nukes. Let me show you the headline. Tell you what I mean. North Korea. North Korea targets United States and South Korea, not international community, but they're targeting the U.S. and South Korea with nukes. It's getting out of hand, folks. You remember Kim Jong-un? This fellow right here. Oh, yeah, he's a madman. Don't let him fool you. His face may look innocent. He may look like just a kid, you know, that you'd probably see walking down the street, minding his own business, eating a Snickers bar, but he's not. He's dangerous. He's a madman. He's killed his own uncle by feeding him to hungry dogs. And when I say hungry, in North Korea, they're starving because there's so much sanctions on them. The people of North Korea are starving. The government's done taking over the farmers and all the crops and food, and just, it's a mess. He's a madman now. He's killed more family members in his own regime. then I don't even know. I don't even know who would come close. I'm sure somebody would, but the point is that he's a modern day Hitler in his own little town. Nation, I should say. And now look, he's threatening yet nuclear war. It says here, North Korea's Kim Jong-un continues his confrontational course after conducting his nation's fifth, count 'em, fifth nuclear test. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter declared it to be a direct challenge to the entire international community. But this is completely hooey, to use a technical term. It's about time for the international community to stop acting as if there really is an international community, according to the Huffington Post. Apparently, we're not going to get into all what the article has to say in this person's opinion, but the point is that we have, and I want to cut to the chase here. It says here that the DPRK, which is the governing regime of North Korea, also uses its nuclear program to extort benefits from its neighbors, including South Korea and China and Japan, as well as the US. Although it's difficult to imagine North Korea ever using nuclear weapons against China, once the former possesses a viable arsenal, it will be largely independent of the PRC's influence. This is very interesting. But the US still continues to be the main target of North Korea in a deterrent sense. Now, he's been threatening nuclear war for quite some time, Kim Jong-un. Many have called it propaganda, his words being propaganda, nothing but violent rhetoric. However, I believe that he's seeking to prove himself since his father's passed away. I believe that he is very paranoid. He's not able to trust his own governing regime, and he is feeling a bit anxious, concerned, trigger happy. And we need to pray about the situation. We here at Open Your Eyes people have, and we're going to continue to pray for Kim Jong-un, for his salvation. The Lord loves Kim Jong-un, as crazy as he is, as dangerous as he is. But I think most of all, we really need to pray as well for the man's salvation, and most of all, well, his salvation is very most of all, but with that the Lord keep him at bay. It's never a joke when you're threatening nuclear war against any nation. Some may say, well, if you ever send anything over to us, North Korea would no longer be in existence, right? We would clearly shoot a nuclear warhead, and North Korea would be bye-bye. That's not the point. Nuclear warhead would still hit us. Now, some may say North Korea doesn't have the capability, and I say on the contrary, yes, they do. You've not been following Open Your Eyes people for the past couple of years. We've been reporting on their capability. China's helped them. Now, we just read where they'd probably be willing to hit China if need be. But the point is that China's helped them. Iran, before the nuclear accord with the P5+1 nations, Iran was helping North Korea build nuclear warheads. It's a mess, folks. It's a mess. There's so much happening on the world scene. And the body of Christ, our position in these last days is to be in prayer, to be vigilant, to be alert, to be watchful, according to the words of Jesus himself, and to be ready at a moment's notice, because as soldiers in Christ, a battle is about to take place in the natural, even on the homeland. And I have to say, including other Western nations. That includes Europe and Australia and Canada. That if we're not constantly in training, if we're not constantly sharpening our sword, if we're not constantly, readying ourselves for the battle, we may be very well caught unaware.